So Julia, if you want to get going, that would be great.
Okay, thank you very much, Brad and Rick, for inviting me. So I started out my career as an opera singer, and it wasn't part of my tabletop or dinner table conversation that I should be a technology analyst, but that's what I ended up to be for most of my career. Although I am a real estate broker now, I'm a green broker, and I started out back in the 80s looking at the very early photovoltaic panels coming out of the research institutes. I worked for IIT Research Institute in Chicago as a technology analyst. And we were looking at wind and solar and geothermal at the beginning of their technology transfer to the private sector. And then I went off into optical disc technology for about 20 years. I ran a international market research company for video discs, compact discs, CD-ROMs, and DVDs, and their applications for content delivery. And then when I started in the real estate business, I realized that the forecast that we had made for wind and solar and geothermal, you could just kind of take those forecasts, skip over the 20 years that I wasn't in the business, and they were still pretty valid, because nothing much had happened in the intervening years. So lucky for me, I didn't really miss anything, and I would have had a boring career if I had stayed in that area. But so I was able to come back and get involved. I was one of the first green brokers in Maine. As a designation from the National Association of Realtors. And I looked for all kinds of ways that I could get involved in those technologies again. And that was how I met Rick, was on the Alternative Energy Committee for Cape Elizabeth. And then we stayed in touch, and his wife and I are also good friends. So I really appreciate the opportunity. So I have put together all the slide decks from those relevant committees that I think are going to be important to you. And so we're going to start with the Climate Council in general. So shortly after Governor Janet Mills became, she had her inauguration, she brought Hannah Pingree, who was a former Speaker of the House of Representatives of the state of Maine, on board as chairman of the Office of Innovation in the Future. And she put Hannah and Maine Department of Environmental Protection Commissioner Jerry Reed in charge of fielding a very far-reaching study in how the state of Maine could accomplish the energy efficiency goals, the climate carbon reduction goals that she set forth for the state shortly after she became governor, which pretty much model the ones that the Paris Climate Accord has put forth. And so they put together a very surprisingly large, you might think unwieldy, but actually it worked, group of technologists and academics and business people and state officials from all over the various departments of the state, together in groups of about 30 in size, and split over 6 different groups. So you can see the groups here. This is the one that I was involved with, buildings, infrastructure, and housing. There's also one on coastal and marine. There's one on resiliency, one on energy, one on transportation, and natural and working lands. So today I want to just briefly review energy, transportation, and then go into a little bit more detail on the buildings group, since that's the group that I relentlessly and annoyingly sat in on all their meetings And the last public meeting that I went to was in Augusta. It was a day-long workshop of this group. And after that, the president of the Greater Portland Board of Realtors and I drove back to Portland and said, you know what? We can't go out in public again at all. And so that was our last meeting. So this is the timeline that the Climate Council has set for itself. It actually was started about a year ago, but the meetings actually began last fall. People met all through the winter, and then they submitted their draft strategies to the Climate Council, the overarching group, at the beginning of June. Between June and December, they're going to refine their strategies. They're going to take them out to various different stakeholder groups. I've convened a stakeholder group of residential real estate and building people for next week, because I think that they need to hear our input. And then at the beginning of December, they are going to put it all together into an action plan. So these are the Climate Council's goals, to deliver the action plan. And so it's very specific to carbon reduction. You may have a great idea. Yeah.
I'm not seeing, are you changing slides? Because I'm still seeing the very first slide.
You are?
Yeah, so am I.
All right. I am changing slides. Well, let's see if I can do this differently then.
There it is.
All right,
Got
go.
it.
Better?
That's
That
it.
works.
All right, good. So here are the 6 groups that I was talking about: buildings, marine, resiliency, energy, transportation, and natural working lands. Here's the timeline that I mentioned, and this is all online on their website. And then the climate goals. So all the things that they might be good things to do, but they have to contribute to reducing our carbon footprint. And so the goal is carbon neutrality for the state by 2045, reducing our greenhouse gases below 1990 levels, 45% by 2030, 80% by 2050. And that's pretty much what all the governors who are all over the country are doing, the same thing, from California to New York. So we're not the only ones doing that. And she's part of a coalition of governors who are committed to doing this same thing in lieu of federal leadership. So and then the other part of it is that as a coastal community, we are particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, sea level rise, ocean acidification, ocean warming, storms, and so we want to make sure that we are prepared for these events, even as we try to mitigate, do our part to mitigate the rising temperatures. So that's the background. So everything has to support that. So while we are talking, there are consultants that were hired by the state to actually measure. Oh, okay, so you want to weatherize buildings, you want to electrify transport. How will that change our carbon footprint? And they're actually doing those calculations, because none of us have that expertise. So we'll get some additional input by the end of the summer from that work to see which of the strategies have more bang for their buck in terms of carbon reduction, which we have a sense of, but we don't know exactly. So this material was presented to the public and to the Climate Council over a 2-day workshop. It was supposed to be a 1-day in-person conference, but that didn't happen anymore. So the first day was the 3 committees that I'm going to go over: buildings, transportation, and energy. And then the second day was the other 3. And as I said, now they're out talking to people, and so it's really great that you guys are interested in getting more information, because when if you do decide to approach them with proposals, you'll have a more of a background. All right, so we'll start with transportation. As I said, I did not attend these meetings, but some of you know that I used to race cars, and so I feel like I'm qualified on matters of transportation on that basis. But I just want to introduce you to what they were doing, and then you can take it from there. Can you see all those people there? These are all the people that were on the committee. You'll see that they were largely government and academic in background, but there were some private sector people on here that had some good qualifications and participated. So here's first the state reps and some of the other people who were active. This is the only committee that did not have a natural gas person on it, reminding everybody that natural gas is a hot button issue in Maine. So as they talked about, they had their meetings, everybody contributed, gave them proposals, they debated them, and they came up with a group of things. So I could make that a little bit smaller, but I guess I can't.
Julia,
So,
Julia,
yeah.
Helen has joined us and says hello.
Hi, Helen. How are you? We missed you. All right. So Helen's actually been at one of my green classes. So I admire you for signing up for extra duty, listening to me go on and on. So in the state of Maine, we have an imbalance of the sectors that are contributing to carbon emissions. So we have an outsized contribution from the transportation sector here at 54%. It's larger than the national average. And a lot of that is because we're a very rural state. As you can see here, 30%, 35% of the light duty vehicle miles are in urban, suburban areas, but 65% of them are in rural areas. And 26% of the emissions are coming from medium and heavy duty trucking. So that is that makes transportation a big target for carbon reduction in the state of Maine, and a tough one because people love their cars, their SUVs, their pickup trucks, and even though people like their Priuses too, they're not going to give them up without a fight. So they did a little preliminary modeling here. If we didn't do anything, this is how the baseline would go. But they had a couple strategies, which they don't really define what they are here, but they all end up pretty much in the same place, which is where we want to be, which is under 2 degrees of warming. So, and then same thing over here as far as screen out of the way here. The electricity consumption of that, because we do not have a robust enough grid at this time in the state of Maine to electrify all of our vehicles. So that's a big part of it. So they talk about some things that we could do, get more people out on bikes, get more streets cleared of cars, get broadband. That's a little bit obscure perhaps, but the more people who don't have to travel to get on high-speed internet, the less miles traveled. Get some biodiesel going in Maine based on our plant-based carbons, get better public transportation, and culvert design. I don't know. I can't bluff my way on that one. Economic synergy. All these things are very much part of the increased efficiencies and benefits that accrue from electrifying the fleet. So these are their 5 main strategies. Expand the electrification of transportation. We know that Efficiency Maine has put a rebate on the sales of new electric vehicles in Maine. As soon as my old Mercedes dies, I will be lining up for whatever I can afford there. But we also want to reduce emissions of internal combustion engines. Again, the federal government's going the opposite direction on this one. But we may be able to be like California and do some things that improve the emissions of our vehicle fleet. And of course, we want to reduce the vehicle miles traveled and improve our infrastructure. We do not have a lot of traffic in Maine. I have to say that's really cool. Being from Chicago, I'm used to sitting in traffic twice a day, going to and from work, and we don't have very much of that, but we still have a lot more idling of vehicles than I think we need to have. And then they really went further. I think that I wish the buildings committee had gone to this point to say, okay, these are all great things. How are we going to pay for it? The government is, is over deficit with COVID. The state is going to have a hard time making ends meet, and we're going to have to figure out how to fund these things if we don't have a Green New Deal coming down from a new administration in Washington.
Well, Julia, just on that slide, the 5th one, the funding, is that the committee that Bill Diamond is heading up to find more money for road repair, or is that something else?
That's something else. I will actually skip to that one because before I skip to that one, I just will say that in strategy number 2, one of the alternative fuels is noted as hydrogen. So that might be something you want to follow up on to look into more detail. And all of their stuff is at this website, maineclimatecouncil.gov. climatecouncil.maine.gov. And there's hundreds and hundreds of pages for each one of these working groups of all the proposals that were submitted and what the details are, so you can dig into those.
For the big item from what you just said, Julia, is not having a sufficient grid to electrify all the cars. Hydrogen electric cars, of course, give us electric cars without having to improve the grid particularly. So anyway.
There you go. So this is what we're talking about funding. The Green Bank, I don't know if you can see it over here. No. Anyway, what they're talking about is basically a Green Bank that is something that's been formed in about 7 other states so far. It's not actually a bank, but it's a pool of money that is revolving, and it starts with an infusion of a few $1 million from a state fund, or could even be some kind of RGGI or carbon tax mechanism, and then that guarantees the loans that they make to people to invest in these things. And then the private sector makes up the rest of the 80% of the money, because the risk has been taken by this by the Green Bank structure. So that's transportation in a nutshell. Would you like to move on to energy?
That would be great, Julia.
Yes. Okay. So the Energy Working Group was chaired by Dan Burgess. Dan Burgess became the chairman of the Governor's Energy Council. He came up from Massachusetts. Massachusetts is a real, let's say, mentor to Maine in many ways, because they share a lot of the same climate considerations, but they're way ahead of us in terms of implementing green projects. So we can learn a lot from what they've done and not reinvent them. And then Ken Colburn is a consultant. So the energy sector in New England is really varied, and I'm not real familiar with the New England grid as a whole. In fact, the whole running of the grid is very complicated matter. But I do know that in the state of Maine, more than half of our energy could get sourced from renewable energy. So while renewables are 19% now, they are I'm not even sure I'm reading that right. Okay, so that's natural gas, that's nuclear, which we don't have anymore in Maine. Imports, oh, there's renewables, it's green. Okay, good. Hydro, coal is going down to almost nothing, and oil is going down to almost nothing. So in Maine, our CMP standard offer right now is the least cost proposal. When I first started looking at it about 5 years ago, it was the best green proposal. So we had over 50% of our energy coming from Maine hydro, from Maine biomass, and from Maine wind. And then that changed for reasons I can't explain, but we could be getting that back. And we are supposed to be getting it because of the Renewable Portfolio Standard, which is another piece of legislation that the governor proposed and was passed by the state legislature. So as far as households in Maine go, we have a disproportionate share of our heating coming from oil. It's 61%. When I started, it was 66%, so we're getting a little bit better. But that is something that we really need to change. Oil-fired boilers, forced hot water systems are incredibly entrenched in the state, and they are next to coal among the worst polluters. So that's something that we need to work on. But we don't have a very good supply of natural gas because of the topography and population characteristics of Maine. There's a natural gas pipeline that runs up the interstate, but doesn't have a whole lot of branches on it. So the natural gas is physically constrained from getting any larger unless they start ripping up more streets, which they've done. Saco was converted a couple of years ago. South Portland, they're trying to convert the rest of it right now. Very small amount of electricity. Back in the 80s, they were building houses with baseboard electric heat. Most of those have been replaced with monitor heat, either propane or oil based. And now heat pumps are getting a great deal of funding from Efficiency Maine for the purpose of converting a lot of this dirty fuel to clean electricity, which again, we don't have enough of to supply if we were to convert all of households, but I'll talk about that a little bit more later. So the renewable portfolio standard is set to increase our renewable supply in our electricity delivery up from 40% to up to 100% by 2050. So that's sorry.
Dick, could you mute your microphone?
What was the question?
There was no question. It was just a microphone noise.
Oh, okay. All right. And I think everybody knows that things are changing rapidly now that solar and offshore wind are no longer being discouraged on the state level. So these are the things that they have been talking about as beneficial byproducts of electrification, and this is their group process, and these were all the people that were involved. So this is a little bit different group. They've got an energy attorney here. Tony Buxton is on the news a lot, right, Rick? Not you, it should be you. Michael Stoddard, who also headed the buildings group, was on this committee. Julie Rosenbach, who's the sustainability coordinator for the city of South Portland, and partners with Portland in Climate One Future initiative, is on this one. Richard Silkman, who did just a fascinating presentation. I encourage you to look up some of his work on how Maine can make this all work together. Really interesting economic perspective in his research. Barry Hobbins, the public advocate, and a lot of other characters. Seth Berry is the chairman of the Energy Committee at the state level, and he's an interesting character. He has backed an initiative to buy CMP and make it a public utility, and got pretty far with it in this last session until COVID kind of took over everybody's attention. And then Marty Groman.
I need to put in a plug. I need to put in a plug for Kurt Adams too, the first name on the list. He's very interested.
Oh, yes.
He's very interested in one of our hydrogen solutions, but in addition to being CEO of the gas company, he used to be the head of the Public Utilities Commission, and of course used to be a lawyer at Bernstein Shore.
So he's a good guy, right?
Yeah. He's
Also
definitely
a small point on the Seth Berry initiative for privatizing the investor-owned utilities is that the committee is actually voting on that initiative tomorrow. And they could vote it out of committee, which means it goes to the floor.
Awesome.
Houses in Maine. So it's amazing how he's kept that moving briskly. In other jurisdictions around the country, any municipalization efforts are usually very, very slow in a matter of years. So it's not to say there won't be, legal battles and other activities which slow it down going forward, but it will be interesting to see. I would suspect it would get voted out of committee tomorrow, probably on party line. I don't know if it takes 2/3 or what the requirement is.
Awesome. So these are the energy strategies. Make sure that we've got enough energy supply. power sector transformation stakeholder process basically is to green, green the grid, encourage the utilization of their contracting authority for combined heat and power, institute a renewable fuel standard for all heating fuels, and develop new financing options to meet the clean energy and emission targets. So again, they've addressed that idea that they have to do something to figure out how to pay for this stuff. And there is so that's the renewable portfolio standard. We talked about that. Power sector transformation, and this is the combined heat and power. I looked into that a little bit. There are 38 installed combined heat and power systems generating 933 megawatts of electricity right now.
Julia?
Yeah.
This is Rick. I had a question about the 2030 goal. When you were looking at the renewable portfolio standard, it said that it wants to go to 80% by 2030. So
Yeah.
that's 10 years. And I'm just wondering if you've heard any discussion about how that's possible without actually shutting down the natural gas plants, which strikes me as impossible.
I don't. I have no deep insight into that group because I didn't follow it. So that would be something you'd have to take up by either digging into their material on their website or calling up your buddy and saying, what's going on with that.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I just don't have. I don't have any more.
Yep. Okay.
There's a distinction between the regional grid and the main grid in terms of renewable energy. Maine, I think, is 70% renewable right now with all the hydro. It does not have a lot of natural gas fired generation compared to New England. New England is half natural gas. So Maine actually is very, very, very green grid, one of the greenest grids in the whole country currently.
It is, but we're not getting it as consumers. If you want as a consumer to have a green electricity supply, you have to pay extra for it. As a CMP customer getting the getting the standard offer, if you look at the sources of it, it is terrible. I mean, we're getting coal and nuclear and all kinds of sources of energy, and the only thing that you can do is to sign up for the green energy thing for another $10 a month, which I guess is okay. But we should be doing so much better because, as you say, we've got it all here. We're just not utilizing it. But that's what the renewable portfolio standard is supposed to address. And then the green bank is again noted as a reasonable way to leverage some funding from the state and bring private capital in. And when you look at a lot of these projects, I don't know per se on the energy and transportation, but I know in the building sector, we can make a case for those initiatives in weatherization, electrification, and solarization of buildings that they are good investments. So I've been working myself on the Green Bank. I helped some people organize a Green Bank Summit last month and got a lot of interest going on the subject. And I actually I have the website mainegreenbank.com because nobody else got it, so I got it for them. So when they're ready to have a website, I have it. So that's the overview on energy. And we're ready to go on to buildings. So the buildings group got this funny title, Buildings, Infrastructure, and Housing. They didn't quite know what to do with it. But they did their best. And I went to, I think, just about all of these meetings, either in person or over the phone or on Zoom. So Michael Stoddard is the Director of Efficiency Maine, and Kathleen Meal is a Vice President at Maine Conservation Brokers. And they co-chaired this effort with a really annoying consultant, but they did a great job. And this is the group that they had to work with. So here are the state legislators. Kay Aiken had some brilliant insights. She does energy modeling, just really smart person. Naomi Beal, who runs the Passive House. Smart is actually a architectural and design group. Iberdrola being the parent company of CMP. Dan Burgess had his hands full with his committee, so he didn't have a whole lot of input here. Rick Karg is another energy modeler who had some really good perspectives. Jeff Marks is a consultant now, used to run E2 Tech. This lady here, Rosanna Patton from the town of York, she had a lot of really good suggestions. Greg Payne was pretty active. Jesse Thompson was very active, architect from Kaplan Thompson, which is a architectural firm that has been a very early proponent of passive house and energy efficient buildings. Dylan Voorhees, during this process, actually changed jobs. He was with the National Resources Defense Council of Maine and then changed to the Vermont Economic Investment Corporation. And Anya Wright, each working group has a youth representative. Anya was our youth representative. She did a great job mostly on the subject of climate justice. Very articulate, serious, and passionate young woman on the subject. It was really really great to work with her. So they did all the same things as far as meetings and putting up with annoying people like me all the time. And this was their brief. So this is transportation over here, and this is the grid over here. The buildings, infrastructure, and housing is responsible for approximately 39% of the emissions of greenhouse gases in the state of Maine. So mostly residential buildings, but significant commercial and industrial. And I will say that on the industrial front, although they did have a strategy I'll get to for industrial, it was not much discussed. And I think it's because the industrial group, where they can save money by reducing their utility costs, they're doing it without a whole lot of intervention. So we kind of saw, I guess they kind of saw them as a little bit more self-sufficient and self-serving to be able to see the opportunities and take advantage of them. And so this is not an active chart, but I will just refer to a study that I go to all the time in the kind of work that I do here. And that's the 2015 baseline study of residential energy consumption that was commissioned by Efficiency Maine, where they went out and did a sample of homes and gave them all blower door tests and figured out their energy consumption and pretty much picked where the low-hanging fruit was for weatherization. And that is the attic insulation, the floor and band joists around the perimeters of the building, the basement walls, and underneath the floorboards of unconditioned space. And then the big one is just air sealing. 34% of the heat loss in a home is just because of leaky houses. We've got some of the oldest housing stock in the state. The average age of the house was built in 1957. That, coupled with the fact that 2/3 of our houses are heated with dirty oil, why we all have chimneys, because there's so much particulate matter and uncombusted carbon in oil that you really should not be blowing it out the side like propane and natural gas. So lots of opportunities there for weatherization. So that's the number one strategy. Actually, number 1 and 2. This is for new buildings, to make the building energy code better. So about 5,000 new homes get built every year right now. So it's not a big. It's like 1% of the whole housing stock. Should be much higher. We don't have enough places to live for all the people that are coming here. But our building code was frozen in 2009 by the administration at the time, and as the building code advanced, the energy code part of that was frozen to 2009. I didn't say that right, but the building code advanced, and it has to advance by law every 3 years to be in compliance, but they held back the energy code. So our energy code right now is 12 years out of date. By next year, 2021, it will be, and so we're trying to get that changed, but also make it so that by a certain point in time, all houses are built to be net zero. In other words, they are generating as much energy as they're consuming. And then to clean up our heating and cooling systems. Most of this is not anything new. We haven't come up with anything new, but just like more heat pumps. Improve the efficiency of the building envelopes in the ways that I said, weatherization. And weatherization includes, if you're going to tighten up a home, you also have to ventilate it and test it for radon, because we have a lot of granite ledge in Maine, and we have to test for radon so that we don't tighten up the houses and trap more radon gas inside. So the weatherization isn't only improving the building envelope, it's also ventilating and testing. And then the last thing that I pushed for personally is to, once we've done that, to label the house with a HERS rating. And then the fourth strategy, lead by example in publicly funded buildings, is just that. If you're going to build a new library or a new government center or a new school, make it LEED certified or the equivalent. And then they gave this one, excuse me, industrial process strategy. And then the last one is in concert with the energy working group, is to optimize the grid so that we can do these things. Make sure that we can get electricity to where people are, and enable something that Rick and I worked on in the Cape Elizabeth energy group, which is to bring renewable energy to where people are living and working, and creating microgrids and that kind of thing. They also did a study with Revision Energy at Efficiency Maine of people who have battery systems in their homes and solar on their rooftops, and they did an experiment where at those very infrequent times of peak load during daytime, when everybody's running their air conditioning, everybody's running their fans, and we have to fire up that oil-fired boiler up in Falmouth, which nobody wants to do, but that's what it's there for. Can we shave some power from people's net metering systems to cover that? And they actually were able to show that they could do that. So part of modernizing the grid is tying everybody's systems into the grid so that we can help each other, and also reduce the need for standby generators, which are never the best idea. So I don't know how much you want to go into any more of these strategies. I kind of gave you an overview of them, and we're kind of coming up on our, almost been talking about this 1 hour, so I'll pass it to you, and I could keep talking about this, or
Well,
what
Julia,
would you like to do now?
Yeah, what within the built environment working group, what are the areas that you're interested in influencing going forward, or that you have some ownership or excitement about? In other words, which of these, I mean, would it be one or two of these strategies?
So I have 3 things that I want to see the group do, and they're all in here. I'm very active in the first 3 of these things, and I'm totally supportive of number 6, and I'm not very involved in 4 and 5. So what I would like to see here is the weatherization part. So this part get funded. It's not easy work. We've got about there's about 580 detached households, and not counting the 200,000 rental houses that Maine has, but actual households. Some of those are mobile homes, like 60,000 are mobile homes. Those are really hard to weatherize. About 20,000 are condos. Those are really hard to weatherize just because of all the parties involved of who owns the outside and who owns the inside. But and a lot of them were built after 1990, so they're not as bad as some of the older housing stock. So if you take away those, I look at, there's about 350,000 homes in Maine that are really good targets for doing those things that I was talking about, the low-hanging fruit of weatherization. You don't have to make them into a passive house. You don't have to, you don't have to go to extremes. But there are things you can do. Efficiency Maine's done about 20,000 homes, and they did it with mostly funding that they got from the I always forget the name of that. What was the fund for recovering after the 2008 mortgage crisis? There was a name for that. Anyway, all the states got funding to build infrastructure projects, and Efficiency Maine got some of that, and so they did a lot of weatherization, and they still have a weatherization program at Efficiency Maine, but they don't seem to like it. I don't know why. They don't seem. At one point, they had in their annual plan that they have to file that they were, by 2030, they were going to do every house in Maine that allowed them to weatherize it. They were going to weatherize it, and then they just dropped it, and they said, "Well, we don't have the funding for it." It's just you want to bang your head on the wall kind of work, because you go into these houses and you tell people you're going to do stuff, and then anything that happens in the house for the next 10 years, they blame on you. And it just it's thankless work, and a lot of people are very grateful, but a lot of people are not. So and every building is different. It's very customized. You send in a crew and they can find mold, or they can find moisture, or they can find all kinds of other problems that just cascade from that, but it has to be done. So that's one of my things. Electrification is the third thing, and solarization, or the second thing, solarization is the third thing. They didn't really address solarization, except to say that it'd be nice if we had more microgrids. And then the HERS index is something I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's called a home energy rating system. It's an independent label that you can put on a building after you've had a blower door test, and you do a lot of other calculations for about $600, $700. And it's like the mile per gallon rating for a car. So just like you wouldn't go and buy a car nowadays without knowing what the MPG rating for it was, right? Well, we have no idea when we go to buy a house. Is this a tight house? Is this not a tight house? I know in my house, we put a lot of money into 2 big phases of energy efficiency here, and you really can't see much evidence of it, except my windowsills are bigger now. But that's about all you can notice, because it's in the walls, it's in the attic, it's in, it's all hidden. And so when I'm done, I'm going to get a HERS rating, and then I can show a potential buyer down the road that you're getting a better house. Look at my rating. And we really need to push that, because it helps people to monetize the investment that they're going to make in making their houses better and more efficient. We do have, and when you sell a house, you have to make a disclosure. As part of the disclosure, you're supposed to say how much energy the heating system uses. And maybe about half the time that actually happens accurately, and the rest of the time it's a wild ass guess, or they just leave it blank. So we could do better on that too, but I really am pushing for getting a rating system. Some states do it as part of getting the weatherization work, like Massachusetts. If you're getting any kind of weatherization work, they help you get a HERS rating, and all their new houses have to have a blower door test. We'll be in that group in a short while, as soon as we upgrade our building energy code. And then once you get a blower door test, you're halfway to getting a HERS rating. And so hopefully we'll get some legislation at some point before I die that says if you're going to get a building occupancy permit, you better have a HERS rating on that house. So those are my goals.
So
Thank you for asking.
Julia, many years ago, there was a law, I believe it was at the federal level and had some state equivalents, that everybody referred to as the clunker law. It was an effort to encourage people to give up their old cars so that the more efficient car fleet would become a larger percentage of the vehicles on the road. It seems to me that with a housing stock as old as ours, we need a program like that will encourage people to, instead of weatherizing, tear the thing down and have a net zero house built.
Well, I don't know about that. That's an interesting. You should write a paper about that, Rick. That's an interesting.
Well, especially for the mobile homes. Especially for the mobile homes.
Well, they do have a replacement program that they've proposed for mobile homes, that they're just going to go in and swap them out with something that is more modular. But we don't have enough available housing. What we need to do, and a much bigger, higher level view, is we need to change how we build our buildings. This idea of every house is a custom house, every house is a stick-built on-site house, is really not serving us well. It's fine, if you want to build something one-off, but most people could be very happy in a modular home that was built in a factory and brought to the site and assembled. The idea that cars are coming off assembly lines and houses are built one by one is really holding us back in terms of modernizing our housing. So that's something that some people are working on. I know that the bright built homes that are it's a type of home that it was the first greenhouse that I sold, are built in a modular factory indoors and brought to the site in pieces, and cranes just kind of put them together, and then workmen go in and hook everything up and finish it all, and it's a much better process and can happen much more efficiently than the way we're building houses now.
What is
and it's been around a long time. In 1970.
Modulars, yeah.
Yeah, in
A
1970.
modular house is a much better house in a lot of ways, and usually they can get Energy Star certified at the factory, so that the guy doesn't have to come out to the site to give it an Energy Star rating, which is another great rating for houses that qualify for it.
What is your perspective on the heat pump situation in Maine? Where are we? Where's that going? How's that look?
I have not updated my heat pump data. I put something on my website last year about where we are, but we're doing really well. The percentage of heat pumps that are going in either as backups to fossil fuel heat systems that are supplementing the use of that, and also are going into new construction, is increasing all the time. And Efficiency Maine is not letting up. In fact, they've increased their goals to get 100,000 heat pumps installed, I think, by 2030. So they're giving sizable rebates on them. It's still expensive. It's going to be hard for anybody who's not in the upper income bracket to be able to afford it, even with the subsidy. So it could benefit greatly from that green bank idea, where you as a homeowner could, if you don't have a lot of equity in your house, or you just can't refinance or get a HELOC, you could go to the green bank and at a very low interest rate borrow the money to put in the heat pumps, and every month your utility bill would be offset by what you would be paying on your heat pump loan, and so you'd be saving a little bit of money every month, and it would really work out for the homeowners. But now Efficiency Maine has some not very attractive interest rates. Their loans are kind of cumbersome, and so nobody's really using them. So we need a much better mechanism whereby people who don't have the access to the capital to make these improvements to get them. And Green Bank is one of the ways we could do that.
For those folks, it seems to me the most bang for the buck in terms of reducing our carbon footprint is one of the items that was in one of your energy slides, which is biodiesel, so that people who are sitting on the oil forced hot water heating systems and want to reduce their carbon footprint but can't afford heat pumps, they need affordable biodiesel to put in those tanks.
Can you convert to biodiesel that easily?
Oh yeah, biodiesel will run in a normal furnace.
Really?
Yeah, it's about the same as number 2 fuel oil.
What about K1? Can it substitute for K1?
Probably not.
No.
What's
Why not?
K1?
Kerosene.
Oh, excuse
Why
me.
not kerosene?
Actually, Dick is probably better equipped to answer that. It has to do with whether or not the burners can be adjusted sufficiently for the different burning characteristics. Dick, do you happen to know how kerosene works in that case?
Everything's a little bit of different viscosity and or BTU per gallon and whatnot. But most things can be, changed back and forth. Jet fuel, kerosene, number 2 fuel oil aren't very far different. There's a little variations.
Well,
So I
that's
guess
great.
that's a yes. That's a yes, Julia.
That is not something that I don't remember was really discussed seriously in the buildings group. So that would be something that maybe you guys could bring up on next week when we have our Zoom meeting with the buildings group.
So just going back on the heat pumps, on a new installation, is there a premium if you put in a heat pump versus hot water baseboard? Is it more expensive for a heat pump?
Should be
Yeah.
less.
It's I would say it's about 50% more.
Is it really? Okay, I was surprised at that.
Most people, it depends on how many zones you have. Most people want to have a zone in every major room. I don't think that's always necessary, but people like to be able to control the heat in the bedrooms. And so once you start putting a whole bunch of units up on the wall or on the floor, then you're looking at bigger systems. So it's worth it, though. I mean, the savings by using a heat pump are offset by the amount you're saving heating your home. I have slides in my presentation that I make in my class to brokers, showing them how much that you can save, and the whole idea of putting that stuff in a new build, it makes it part of your mortgage. So it's a 30-year proposition, and it's a fixed price. So that means that you pay a little bit more in your mortgage, but then over time, the amount of money you're saving just grows and grows. So, if you were to stay in that property that whole time, which you probably wouldn't, but if you did, by the end of that 30 years, you would have made out like a bandit putting heat pumps in from the get-go.
Unless oil prices stay where they are now.
Yeah, well, that's probably not going to happen.
Do you have a sense, Julia, of I mean, is there any way that the working groups tie out the connection between their strategy and the objectives overall? This doesn't look like it's going to achieve the objectives from my very, very, skim the surface perspective here.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, the consultants are figuring out what kind of carbon reduction we can expect from the strategies, and we don't know what that's going to be. And this is the beginning of a 30-year process to get to a goal that is going to have opportunities that we don't know what they are yet. So things are going to change even next year and the next 5 years in terms of how we can improve, and particularly hydrogen is a good example of something that could make a real difference, but isn't on the radar as much as it might be in the future. So,
and the efficiencies in solar are going up. There are all kinds of technological things that could happen. So.
Yeah, and the costs are still coming down. So I think that I think it could be better. I wish I had seen more details in the buildings group, but they were weighing a lot of different parties and interests, and so I think we'll see what happens by the fall.
And this has just been a fabulous presentation, Julia. You are a very very well spoken on this work, and really
thank you.
appreciate your time today. The state carbon neutrality by 2045. What does that mean?
So that means that for state operations, in terms of transportation and buildings, that the state itself, the money that the state pays for energy will be carbon neutral by that time. So that's all the state buildings, all the state vehicles, and yeah, the operations of the state will be carbon neutral.
That's very impressive, and it allows for some kind of offset in the mix somehow.
I don't know exactly what the details are about that.
Yeah. And the
I
45%.
imagine that.
Go ahead.
I imagine that they've made some calculations in doing that those goals are achievable.
And then there are always the political curves, Brad. We know from Ryan Hamilton's work, there's an ongoing dispute about whether heating with wood pellets is carbon neutral. And so you'll get a lot of people who'll say that it is carbon neutral, and we have the availability of a relatively inexpensive state-based source. But other people say, no, it's not carbon neutral, and that tosses that whole thing out of the calculation. So it depends on how a committee might vote on that, on how that percentage would be used.
That's a very, notice I didn't bring that up. That's a very controversial subject, and there's a lot of people in the state of Maine that feel very strongly that wood is the right thing to do, and those, we know who they are, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So what we're trying to do is build wood stoves that capture and reignite as much of the particulate matter that wood burning emits, and try and do our best to make it as clean a process as we can, because I'm pretty sure that that's not something that anybody wants to try and abolish.
And I have one more.
But there are other opportunities that we didn't talk about for embodied carbon in buildings, and we can do a lot of things with wood that we haven't really even touched on. There's one facility that is taking an old paper mill and converting it to make wood pulp-based cellulose insulation, and there's we should be using Maine wood to build what they call cross-laminated timber, CLT, which can replace steel and concrete in building construction, both of which are materials that have a lot of embodied carbon. Cement alone is an incredibly big emitter of carbon in its production, and we use cement like it's nothing. We're constantly using concrete everywhere, and that's something that needs to really have some alternatives. And the other thing is the plastic basis of a lot of foam insulation are polycarbons, and those have a lot of embodied carbon. So getting our building materials cleaner at the same time as not overly raising the price of building materials, which is already pretty high, is another thing that it's in the cracks of this group. It didn't end up to be one of the major strategies because we just don't have the technology yet. But that's one of those things that I think in 3 to 5 years is really going to change.
One of the things that this group's been kicking around just in the last couple of 3 months, we've seen work coming out of Europe on the decarbonization of cement production by using hydrogen. There are hydrogen based processes at the industrial level that could dramatically reduce the carbon footprint of cement manufacture.
Oh, great. That would be awesome. So I hope this gives you guys a little bit of a overview and inspires you to dig in and get involved. I think that all of us that have been active are really hopeful that a lot of these things will take off, and they are definitely looking for input. So now is the time to put your ideas forward in whatever of these three groups that you think is appropriate, and keep at it, because like I said, things are going to change, people are going to change, and so keep advocating for your ideas.
Doug or Dick, did you have any questions for Julia today? And you have to unmute yourselves to speak.
You had mentioned the.
Speak up, Doug. Can hardly hear you.
Yeah, I'm unmuted, but it's actually good session here. I don't have any questions in the back of my head at the moment. Although
Thanks,
I
Dick.
will say this, that in 2009, I took part in what Rick was describing as the Cash for Clunkers program. And thank you very much. You all contributed to the purchase of my truck.
Doug,
I
are
wanted
you all
to
set?
ask. Can you hear me
I'm set.
okay?
Yeah.
Do I come through?
Yes.
Julia, thank you so much for the talk. It was really great to hear about.
Who was talking?
I'm Doug.
Brown.
Oh, hi, Doug. I
Sorry.
can't see you.
Yeah, I don't have my video cam on, but
Okay.
you had mentioned the something like a 2015 Efficiency Maine report on the Maine consumer of energy, some kind of a big overview study. So I went to the Efficiency Maine website. I'm on some kind of a reports page. Did you mean the annual report, or is
No.
there a specific? Because down below it has residential evaluations. It's got to be one of these guys.
No, that's what they Efficiency Maine has a lot of programs, and they account for all of their programs really carefully, which is a great thing about them. Let me see if I can find it real quickly here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because a couple.
I use this study all the time. It has the first time I read it, in fact, Rick, you saw me when we used to go to the health club on the treadmill reading
Is that what
reports.
you were reading?
That's one of the reports I was reading. And people would look at me because I would go, "Oh, wow," in the middle of jogging. Because I would just say, "Oh, that's how that works." Okay. Let's see if I can find it here. And unfortunately, it's getting a little bit out of date. Here it is.
Oh no, that's fine. I think it's okay to be whatever date it is.
Can you see that?
No,
No?
I see email.
Yeah, we've got somebody's Gmail up here. Is that yours, Julia?
No. Oh, yeah,
That's-
that is my Gmail. Let's see.
Climate strategy on the left.
Here we go.
No.
Now do you see it?
Yeah.
So that's it. Maine Single Family Residential Baseline Study, 2015 by the NMR Group. They went out and found a representative sample of households, and then they analyzed the heck out of them. They did blower door tests. They did all kinds of analytics. They gave them all HERS ratings. And here's all the HERS scores. So 100 is the average from 2004 energy code. It's so that's considered the average, and better is lower. So and worse is higher. So some of the buildings had twice as much of a HERS score as you were supposed to have. Some of these buildings didn't look like they had any insulation whatsoever, and then a couple of them were really good. And they analyzed the let's go back to the executive summary. So they analyzed the areas of heat loss. So when I look at this, I say, well, we can address air leakage. We can't address above grade walls. It's very hard to make wall systems better after they've been built. It's very invasive, and we don't want to do invasive things because that's when we get sued by people. So, but you can do, this is basically the attics. You can do basement walls, windows. Most of the windows you could do some air leakage improvements too, but we really can't go around replacing windows. But we can definitely do floor joists, and so those are the things that are doable, and they talk about it throughout the report. So I really recommend it. I've probably read it 10 times. So here's where I got the housing data from. 583,000 single family homes. There's actually 750,000 buildings, but they don't count the rental buildings. They don't count the camps and that kind of thing, which is another subject for another day. But anyway, here's the mobile homes, here's the condos, and then here's the amount of homes that were built after 1990, when they actually had some energy code, not a very good one, but they actually had something. And then here's the real opportunity, is all these older homes. And so that's just colored a lot of my thinking.
Super.
Well, thank you. I actually have the report now.
Yeah,
Appreciate you're walking through the key points there. That's great.
it's I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I think it's really valuable. I hope they update it one of these days. I'll have to start pushing for that among the many things that I push for.
Well,
So
again,
I hope you guys go out and push for your issues, and I hope that this helped you kind of give you an idea of what you could do, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for you here to get your message out.
Thanks again, Julia.
yeah,
You're
very
welcome.
exciting.
Thank you for the opportunity. Did you record this, Brad?
Yes.
Did you send me the recording so my assistants back here can they seem to have slept through the whole thing. See them back there? Sleeping through the whole presentation. And they're gonna ask me later, Mom, how did you do?
Any raspberries left, Julia?
Oh yeah,
All right, good.
they're in the cooler by the driveway.
Any,
All right, guys, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was wonderful to spend this time with you. Thank you for the participation, and let's keep in touch.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.
thanks, Julia.